are very welcome to the Ogham Academy podcast. I'm Lora O'Brien, Irish Draoi, author and historian, and today we're looking at one of the most powerful and misunderstood layers of Ogham, the Bríatharogaim. These are the short poetic phrases attached to each of the fí, the Ogham letters. 3 phrases per letter. And they're some of the oldest surviving teachings that we have in this tradition. They're also some of the most beautiful and confusing, in fairness. So let's start with the name itself, Bríatharogaim. That literally means word oghams or ogham of words. You'll sometimes hear them called kennings, a poetic device where a thing is described not directly but through metaphor or suggestion. Now, this isn't unique to Ireland. You can see it in the Norse tradition too. Maybe they got it from us. A sword might be called wound hoe, or a ship a sea steed. But the Irish form is older, more structured, and in the case of Ogham, absolutely central to how these letters were taught. Now, this part of Ogham learning is from the manuscript tradition. If you've listened to the earlier podcasts or watched a YouTube channel video or read a blog at the Ogham Academy, you're going to understand that there were a couple of main phases, but the earliest was the monumental tradition, which is the stone inscriptions, and then we had the manuscript tradition, usually from medieval times. So the earliest manuscript that preserves the Bríatharogaim is in Lora O'Brien, the Book of Ogham. It survives in later copies, but the content likely goes back to at least the 9th or 10th century, so as early as the 800s. Professor Damien McManus has done the absolute definitive work on this. His 1988 paper in Eru journal gathers, translates and analyses the 3 main sets of kennings that remain to us. These are Bríatharogaim Móran MacMoan, Bríatharogaim Mac Int Og, and Bríatharogaim Concolin. Now, each Ogham letter is assigned 3 phrases or three words really that make a phrase actually, and it's one from each collection. So, for example, the first fí, which would be be or birch, has these. So from the set of kennings, which would be Bríatharogaim Móran MacMoan, we start with Fiochas Fultcán, which translates as withered foot with fine hair. Then from the set of kennings, which is Bríatharogaim Mac Int Og, we have Glasham Knish, the greening of the skin. And then from Bríatharogaim Concolin, we have Masha Malach, which is the beauty of the eyebrow. As I said, they're a little bit mystical or metaphor or suggestion. They're not exactly clear divination methodology or anything. So what do they actually mean? Honestly, that's the work. They're not meant to be obvious. They were designed as memory tools, poetic keys, part of the poet's training. This is the Philly, the old poetic schools in Ireland, and students were expected to interpret, expand and internalise them really. So when I teach courses at the Ogham Academy, this is often a huge part of the work, and that's where their power is. So I would say that each kenning, especially when we're working with it from a spiritual perspective as well as just an academic, but each of these Bríatharogaim opens a door into deeper symbolic or energetic work with the letter. Now, I used to run a much longer 6-month program. I don't have it available currently as I record this, but maybe we'll bring it back if enough people want it, which did a weekly guided journey with each of the Ogham letters. And I always describe it as basically each letter is like an island that you can visit, and the letter is the key to it, but the island contains a multitude, right? So hopefully that helps to conceptualize it for people. The Bríatharogaim are not rigid definitions. They are invitations. They're layered, they're sometimes contradictory, they're always evocative. And remember, each one of these lists of the Bríatharogaim was done by a different scholar or a different scribe. So it's almost like their personal interpretations, which happen to have become either the definitive ones because they were like the professors in the schools, the Olive, which would be professor really in modern day terms, or they were just the ones that have survived, that maybe every single person who worked with the Ogham had their own set of Bríatharogaim. So again, this is something I always bring in, that we make our own kennings. Let's look a little bit closer at Be, seeing as how it's the first one and we have brought it up and we can use it as an example. So birch is associated with new beginnings, with clarity, with purification. It's the first letter, the first tree, even though everything is not a tree in Ogham, some of them are, and this is the first one. But instead of saying start fresh, the Bríatharogaim give us something much stranger, which is withered foot with fine hair. Now, that could point to spitballing, the first fragile steps of new life, or the vulnerability of a newborn, or maybe even a corpse laid to rest beneath a birch that grows from it. Weird, I know, but this is what we've got to work with. Then we have the greening of skin, which is maybe literal, like moss or new growth on bark, maybe metaphorical, like a flush of life returning in spring to the skin of the earth. And then the beauty of the eyebrow, that one always kind of stops me. It's a strange little image, and if we think about it, maybe the eyebrows frame the face, reveal emotion, hint at expression. So maybe Be isn't just about starting, maybe it's about what you show when you begin, what you let others see. And honestly, this is just random spitballing, as I said, but that's the work of the Bríatharogaim. They ask questions, they build your relationship with this Ogham letter. They're not designed to just give you neat little answers. And I have people who have taken my own set of kennings that I, created for public consumption and give away in our free guide. The link is below if you want access to that. And honestly, there's some people on YouTube making videos that are just, they've written them out on sticks and they're just claiming it, and they don't even speak the name of the letter. They're just like, oh, this is what that means, or this is what that means. And it's just, it's using my work for your own benefit, but that aside, it's just such a shallow perception of the depth of these Bríatharogaim. Now, it is important, though, to remember that these kennings are not random. McManus shows that the phrases are structured, they often follow patterns, and they reflect a system of symbolic logic that made sense within early Irish societies. So it is our work to develop modern kennings for our own work within our own societies. But some of these early medieval ones, they refer to colours, to weapons, to animals, to body parts, to poetic qualities, even to like moral or ethical traits. And they were very likely part of this oral teaching within the bardic schools or the Fili, the schools of poetry. And they were probably committed to memory and passed from poet to poet. And that makes them precious. These aren't surface level symbolic attributions that are just tacked on in modern times. They are part of the deep architecture of Ogham as a sacred, poetic, legal and magical system. And I want to be clear now, this isn't about decoding some hidden key. This is about learning to think like a poet, like a fila, to hold images in your mind, to accept the inexplicable in many cases, to engage, to build relationship, to let meanings echo and contradict and unfold gradually as you develop your own relationships with the Om over time. Because definitely some of these kennings mean more to me now than they did to me 10 or 20 years ago when I was studying the Om, for sure. If you've ever struggled with the idea of using Om for divination or spiritual insight or magical practice, honestly, this is where I'd start. Not necessarily with the letters themselves, not even with the trees. Definitely not with the trees. Actually, don't start with the trees, because that's just, again, New Age bullshit. Not that the trees aren't important, but it is important to understand that the Om is more than just trees. And I have to keep repeating it because people keep coming back to me with, what about the trees? But using the letters as keys to this deeper understanding, to this contemplation or meditation on the Om, the meanings, the poetic inspiration. Starting with the Bríatharogaim, because they teach you how to listen and think and feel, not just consciously, but to engage intuitively as well with each of the Om. And they show how each fee holds more than one thing, maybe a body part and a state of being, maybe a weapon and a season, maybe a type of speech. And you begin to see that meaning in Om isn't a single straight line. It's this beautiful network of both conscious and unconscious engagement, again, with other world forces or supernatural forces, as well as just what you see like on the page in front of you or on the screen in front of you in modern connections. So it's this network, like think of it like a mycelial network underneath a bunch of trees, and we're back to trees again. I can see why people get confused, in fairness. So today's practice, choose one fee, and if you're new, I recommend the first one. Look up its 3 Bríatharogaim phrases for yourself. I've pronounced them in this, but we've got them listed in the blog at the Om Academy. Read each phrase aloud, slowly, one at a time, and then close your eyes and speak the phrase again and see what images arise. Do this with each one. Don't try to figure it out. Just notice it, listen, and let the meaning come to you. And your journal prompt would be, which Bríatharogaim phrase unsettled or moved you? Write that phrase at the top of the page and then free write. What does it remind you of? Is there a memory, an emotion, a body sense that connects? Does it shift as you sit with it? Does it change? Does it grow? Does it shrink? This isn't a riddle to solve. It's a doorway that you can walk through slowly, carefully, mindfully. So that's us for today. I hope that this episode helps you to feel the richness and the depth of Om a little bit more. Not just the letters, but as an expression of Irish culture, of Irish heritage, as living images, ancient phrases that were spoken in the halls of greatness through centuries. And most importantly, really as invitations to see more than one truth at a time. And I think that's what a lot of modern people really struggle with, especially those who maybe grew up outside Irish culture, where everything has like a clear, distinct definition, and it's very kind of cerebral, and it's very, it has to be very, very much understood, and there's no allowance for the dreaming. There's no allowance for the gaps that are filled by things that are not mundane. Okay. Next time, we will take this further. We can look at how we actually use the Om, not just for learning, but for listening, for asking, for answering. So yeah, I'm going to go into divination, and no, it's not just pulling sticks from a bag and looking up a chart. So if you're not already following the podcast, now's the time. And if you want to keep a copy of the Bríatharogaim handy, download the free guide at oam.academy/guide. It's clean, accurate, and it comes from the proper Irish sources. So slán go fóill, and may you see what is said between the lines. Slán.